My name is Rob Portman, and they say I was on Governor Romney's short list of vice presidential candidates. Apparently, it wasn't short enough. What a great convention, and I'm delighted to be here tonight to talk about the fundamental differences between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama when it comes to understanding our economy. Let's begin by talking about something the Democrats love to demonize: Mitt Romney's success in the private sector. He built a company from the ground up, created lots of jobs, and yes, he made money. He made it the old-fashioned way, folks. He earned it. Then you have Barack Obama, who never started a business, never even worked in business, and yet he claims those who have should give credit to the government or someone else for their success. So you have one candidate who understands that success comes from working hard, competing, and taking risks. And you have another candidate who believes that success comes from government. Let me ask you this: which one do you think knows how to turn around this economy? Right answer. Let me ask you this: which one would you choose to invest your life savings? Should it be any different for safeguarding our nation's economy? Or let's say you don't have any savings. Let's say you're worried about how to pay September's rent or mortgage. Let's say you're one of the millions of Americans out of work, or millions more who have given up looking for work. You've got to be running out of patience and hope. You've got to be tired, looking for a new start. Well, you don't have to be patient any longer. Through your vote this fall, you can change the leadership of this country and the opportunities for you and your family. America, it's been nearly 4 years of 8% unemployment, double-digit unemployment for young people, Hispanics, African Americans. 4 years. FDR and Truman won an entire world war in 4 years. America is tired of waiting. Listen, in business, if you don't move rapidly, what happens? You're out of business. You're finished. We want a president who operates at business speed, not government speed. President Obama says that he deserves re-election because his economic policies have worked. Not in this universe, they haven't. In fact, the experts tell us that if we don't change our policies, we're going back into recession next year. Folks, tens of millions of Americans are not out of the last recession. Governor Romney had a plan to build his business. He now has a detailed plan to restore our economy and strengthen the middle class. I ask you, where's the president's economic plan? Blaming others does not qualify as a plan. Now, the president did submit a budget. It was so bad, folks, that not a single Republican or a single Democrat in the entire United States Congress would vote for it. He got 0 votes. That is a failure of leadership. President Obama has been right about at least one prediction he's made about the economy. He said, if I don't have this done in 3 years, then there's going to be a one-term proposition.
All right, well, there we have Senator Portman, the man who might have been vice president, was talked about on the short list from the United States Senate. We're joined now by a colleague on the other side of the Capitol over in the House. Aaron Schock, of course, a member from the great state of Illinois, my home state, so where to go?
Oh, Illini.
Yeah, we try. I didn't do the Illini thing, but I'm a big fan of
Me
the
either.
state.
I'm a Bradley University grad.
Okay.
Peoria, so
let's talk a little bit about the Paul Ryan that you know, because obviously Democrats have spent the last 3 weeks trying to paint a picture of Paul Ryan. He gets his chance to paint a picture of who he is today. How much can he be, from what you've known about him, the kind of guy that can go out there, fire up a crowd, but also relate to the person watching on TV who's not a rabid partisan?
Right. Well, I think he has shown a demonstrated ability to do that, both as a candidate as well as an office holder. First, let's review the facts. He comes from a district in Wisconsin that is primarily a Democratic district. It was held by a Democratic congressman for 2 decades. Barack Obama won his congressional seat. So this is a candidate who has a proven ability to win independent Democrat voters. Second, coming to Washington, D.C., he's not some right-wing budgeteer. He's a deep policy thinker, enough that he can work with somebody like Ron Wyden, who's a more liberal Democrat from the state of Oregon, on a comprehensive reform to Medicare. He also has an ability to articulate convincingly enough to his colleagues that they should support his plan. So much so that his budget got more votes than any budget that's passed the Congress in the last 15 years. There's a lot of people in Washington, D.C. who can talk about what needs to happen, and nobody really follows them. Nobody really gets on board. This is somebody who has actually laid out a budget, but also passed it with record numbers of votes. So whether it's as a candidate or a policy holder, Paul Ryan's the real deal. He's a real guy. And tonight I'm sure he'll talk about his bow hunting. I'm sure he'll talk about his noodling of catfish. I'm sure, that he'll the beer and the bratwurst guy from Wisconsin. But he really is the real deal. He is the guy that goes home every weekend to be with his wife and his 3 kids. If you watch him on the Sunday morning talk shows, it's always live from Wisconsin because he won't go to the studios. He insists on being back with his family. So he's the real deal, and I'm so excited that the rest of the country is going to get to see the man that I'm so proud of to call my friend.
You mentioned his noodling. How about his workouts? They are legendary. What can you tell us? What insights can you give us about this man?
I will tell you that for the first 6 months in Congress, I made fun of him at the gym because he would work out to P90X, these workout routines, and I said, gee, these kind of remind me of, my mom's Jane Fonda workout tapes, But he talked me into doing it one week, and it kicked my butt, and that was 3 years ago. And now every day the House is in session. We meet at 6:30. There's about 5 guys that do this P90X workout routine. He's 42 years old, and I think the workout, as much attention that it speaks to his whole life. Very disciplined, very focused. He does it for 2 practical reasons. One, it keeps him in shape. But number 2, he's very mindful that he lost his father at a young age. His grandfather died at a young age. And he's talked seriously about the fact that, he doesn't want to leave his kids and his wife behind, and he wants to make sure he keeps himself in tip-top shape. At 42 years old, the guy's pretty ripped. And he's an inspiration not only in the gym, but also on the Ways and Means Committee where we serve together. He's a pretty deep policy guy.
So there are a lot of Republicans that I talk to, strategists who work with House candidates. When he was picked, I talked to a lot of them that Saturday, and they were tearing their hair out. They said, we're now going to have a referendum on the issue of Medicare in these House races. That's not what we want, or at the Senate level, that's not what we want. We don't want to battle on this. We want to talk about the economy. How well do you think you can do if Medicare is, and it's clear Democrats are going to make it, one of the big issues in the on the agenda for these congressional races?
Well, I think it's clear Democrats were licking their chops when the announcement was made, and for the last 18 days, they've done their hardest. They've tried their hardest to vilify him, to distort his record, to distort his budget. And the polls haven't been effective negatively. I mean, Paul Ryan, Mitt Romney, and Barack Obama and Joe Biden are still neck and neck in most of these polls. Some of them show them up a little, some of them show them down a little bit. But by and large, Paul has done a great job of getting out front on this issue. So has Mitt Romney. And I think the choice for people really is the party and the candidates who have ideas and positions and platforms, and the party who's really just attacking the other party who has those ideas. Barack Obama's had 4 years to lay out a budget. He's not been able to do it. He's had 4 years to propose proposals for Medicare and Social Security, not been able to do it. So, I mean, at some point, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney are the only ones with the plan.
Congressman Aaron Schock of Illinois, thank you so much. Do not leave without signing in on the iPad, a doodle, anything you got. Show us what you got.
What's in the line I to you?
Go for it. Go for it.
All right,
take it on the way out and sign in. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
No, I think we have the congressman right here. We know that the battle for the House is going to be fought. Of course, the economy is still the #1 issue, but there's still going to be a lot that is going to be focused on that Ryan budget vote. Most of Republicans in the House voted for that budget. Democrats are just laying in wait to make that a centerpiece of the campaign against them. They want to talk about Medicare cuts. They want to talk about the cuts to the social programs. And it'll be very interesting to see if Republicans survive this. They're going to believe they have a mandate now to do something more substantive.
No question about that. All right, substance is all about our next guest. It is George Will,
of course,
one of our favorites, absolute favorites, because he knows baseball as well as he knows politics, which is terrific, of course. So George Will, we're just talking to Congressman Schock about Medicare, about Paul Ryan. Are Republicans really eager to engage on this debate on the substance of the Paul Ryan budget plan?
If they weren't, Ryan would not have been picked. Because when you pick him, you embrace the budget. Romney had more or less done that already, but now he's wrapped his arms around it, and it's his. And so far, they can give you some polling data within the margin of error that says they're slightly winning this argument.
But is this the argument they want to be having or should be having, George, at this point?
It depends on whether or not you take seriously the fact that the trajectory of the country is potentially and in the short term ruinous. Romney believes this. Ryan believes this. Many Americans say this. What this campaign is going to do is test whether they mean it.
So tell us about Mitt Romney in this choice. What does tonight's speech mean for his campaign? How important is it for him to connect the voters on a different level through Paul Ryan? Is it about that, or is it about the policy?
It's both. First of all, the theory is, I don't know if it's true, that young people are much less enthusiastic than they were. On our Sunday show last Sunday, I gave the figure from the Pew survey that something like 25% of young people between 18 and 34 have moved back in with their parents, that unemployment 18 to 30 is higher than in Nevada, the worst state. It's 12.7%. The hope is, and I'm skeptical, but people know more about this than I, is that Paul Ryan can connect with this. Now, the idea of vice presidential candidates connecting with cohorts, moving states, all of that strikes me as unproven.
And the way that Lloyd Benson was able to really connect for Dukakis, right? That worked out really well. Okay, so we've been asking smart folks like you this question. Given how bad the economy is, given what you just told us about the Pew survey, given the fact that you have a deep-seated pessimism right now among voters that things are going to get better with an Obama presidency, why is this race tied?
It's the key question, because every metric but one says Obama loses. The one, however, is, let's call it the Peter Hart metric, because Peter's the one who said, if you go back to the end of the Second World War, in every election except the Nixon victories, the most likable candidate wins. Truman, Dewey, Stevenson, Eisenhower, et cetera, et cetera. Michael Barone, however, argues that the likability is not the crucial metric because there's favorable, unfavorable with particular issues, and on those, Mitt Romney's doing much better.
He is, except when I looked at the question of who do you think is going to do a better job on the economy, Mitt Romney is ahead on that. But then when you ask specifically, okay, who do you think understands people like me? Who do you think in 2 years who will do a better job on the economy? You know, will it get that much better with Obama? No. Will it get that much better with Romney? No. So it seems like he has two problems here. It's not just that people don't think he's likable or huggable or whatever it is, but they haven't really seen what he's going to do, who he is, just in terms of the guy who would be the president.
In a way, Romney succeeded too well in convincing the public that the economy's bad, and they're saying it's so bad you can't even fix it.
Right.
Therefore, we might as well have someone we like in our living room once a week.
So tell me, you talked about enthusiasm and also whether people like the guy or not. Are people in this room even ready to go out there and fight for the Romney agenda?
They're ready to go out and fight against the other guy's agenda.
Well, that's sort of my point. We know that. That's a given about Republican enthusiasm. This it hasn't felt like a Romney convention, and certainly not a Romney party still.
Well, partly because people are waiting for tonight and not Thursday. I suppose that's the risk you take when you pick
Paul Ryan,
a rising star,
right?
Someone who's still a novelty, someone who genuinely hasn't been introduced to the kind of people who watch us at events like this.
Do you agree with this notion? I've seen it floated in a couple columns in the last couple of days that through Reagan and Ryan, Romney is a transitional figure where you've got Reagan as this icon of the past, Ryan now as this icon of the future. Mitt Romney really not figuring into that equation in a major way.
Well, he's the nominee of one of our two parties. That makes him a big deal. Clearly, nothing in my experience, and this is my 11th presidential campaign, can match the fact that a junior 42-year-old congressman from southeastern Wisconsin is indisputably the intellectual leader of the Republican Party. No, never been anything like it.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to go back to Robert Taft, who was a fairly senior senator in the late 40s and early 50s, to get anything like this kind of intellectual dominance. It's a great tribute to Ryan. It's a great tribute to the fact, as Pat Moynihan said on the eve of the 1980 election, he said something momentous has happened in American politics. The Republican Party is the party of ideas, which really smarted for Pat to admit that.
So we know that there are only a handful of states that are going to decide this election. In fact, there are only a handful of counties within those states that decide this election. If you knew the answer for one state, right, I could slip you the answer that says this is how this state voted. What state would you want to know?
Colorado.
You think that decides this?
No, I don't think it decides it, but I think it's indicative. I mean, the easy answer is Florida, because if Romney loses Florida, we all go to bed early that night.
Right.
If he wins Florida and it moves west, we're going to see whether he can take back a state that is demographically more and more favorable to Obama and that Obama won last time.
All right, a different answer, as always, from George Will. And, George, are the Nationals going to hang on, and can they do it without Strasburg down the stretch?
Well, they're going to have to.
I know they're going to. They keep saying it.
Well, I've just been sitting outside watching the Nats game on my app. If you'll just hang on, I'll tell you the score.
I think they were winning. I heard Harper had 2 homers early in the game.
He does have 2 home runs, but it's now 5-3.
Well,
so.
all right. Now we're worried again.
We're
just
worried
like
again.
that. All right, George
Exactly.
Will, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Be sure to sign in on our iPad, as always. We're doing with all our guests. Thank you so much, George.
George.
Thank
It's great
you.
great to have you here. I know. I love that. This is what is so fascinating about this election is, before 2008, we looked at 1 or 2 states. We said Ohio or Pennsylvania, Ohio or Florida. Now, when we look at the battleground states, is it Colorado, a Virginia, a Nevada? This map now looks so very different than the one that we've been using.
Speaking behind us is the governor of Puerto Rico, Luis Fortunio. Will tell you, as always, you can follow all of the action. If you want to see the speakers, you can watch us side by side on the ABC News iPad app. It's really terrific, great streaming coverage, and you can still watch us over in the corner or flip between us.
What's great is, look, we know you're doing this already. You watch TV with a screen open.
That's right.
Now what you can do is you can watch, of course, our broadcast coverage at 10 o'clock. You can keep the screen open, watch us. You can also, on that same screen, have this streaming.
There you go.
There's so much that you can do. And, of course, do your tweeting and everything else.
ABCnews.com to watch it all. And the hashtag today is 2012 GOP. I am at Rick Klein, and my cohort here is at Amy E. Walter. We are now joined by... you don't look that much like Paul Ryan, but I've heard this I'm going to play Paul Ryan in the movie line a little bit recently. It's Chris Van Hollen.
I'm going for an Academy Award.
All right. A Democrat from Maryland.
Actually, you know what?
We should. The mask.
You got to make sure to pick up one of these. For those of you who don't know, Congressman Van Hollen is actually going to play Paul Ryan in debate prep with the vice president. So you may want to take one of these back and show up to see the vice president with this. What do you think?
I've
sounds like he's passing. I don't know.
I think I may pass on that, but thanks for the suggestion.
So what do we have to know? What are you going to be telling Joe Biden about how Paul Ryan will be on that debate stage? He hasn't debated that much. He's had some debates on the House floor. Obviously, lots of colloquies with you in committee. But what do we have to know about Paul Ryan?
Well, look, the vice president knows these issues well, but what I know is how Paul Ryan tends to present these issues. And as you know, I get along very well with Paul personally, but we have this big clash on the policy issues in the committee. So I'm used to that back and forth. I don't want to give away any secrets right here, but no, but very seriously, look, I mean, the Ryan-Romney plan for the country is pretty clear, and I think that they will present it the best they can, but in order for Romney and Ryan to be able to sell this to the country, they can't get you beyond the cover page. I mean, they got a nice cover page to talk about it, but you get into the details here. You get under the hood, and it's bad news for the country. It is a return to the trickle-down policies that we tried in the Bush administration. They failed. They want to rerun that movie at the expense of the rest of the country, and I think it's a failed experiment the first time. Let's not try it again.
So there are a lot of people in this that we've talked to at this convention who say, look, Democrats have spent a whole lot of time making this case. They've spent millions and millions of dollars on negative advertising. They've driven Mitt Romney's negatives very high. In fact, our last poll shows that he's coming to this convention with the lowest favorable rating of any major party candidate since 1984. And yet this race is still tied. So how do you go about, if you say you're making this case, but it seems like the public still isn't buying it?
Well, as you know, there are very few undecided voters left, but there are some, and those are the folks who are tuning in now. Most Americans are normal people. They don't really tune into these elections before
That's
September.
You, normal America.
Before the conventions, before
That's right,
September.
That's right.
And now I think people are going to look at the conventions. They'll look at the debates. And those debates and the conventions will provide an opportunity to really draw the contrast. There's one thing we all agree on, that there is a really sharp choice in this election. And if you look at the Romney-Ryan budget, what it does is call for another round of big tax cuts for the very wealthy, people like Mitt Romney. This is no secret. I mean, it's in their plan, right? And if you agree that we should reduce the deficit, as we should, and you ask not one penny more from the very wealthy, it means you're going to whack everybody else hard in your budget. You do whack seniors on Medicare, you whack our investment in education in our future, and you whack middle-income taxpayers. So I'm looking forward to this debate. It's true that a lot of Americans are not yet focused on the details because, until now, Romney has been able to talk in generalities, feel-good phrases, but now we can look at this plan in detail and look at the very real and very negative consequences for the American people.
And does he own everything in the Ryan budget as far as you're concerned?
Well, he has said himself that he wanted the Senate to pass it and that he would sign it.
That he would have signed it.
He would sign it as president.
But he's also said he'll have his own budget.
But actually, then when you press him, he says we're essentially on the same page. So I don't even think he's trying to have it both ways anymore. He's adopted this package. He did it in order to help shore up his Tea Party support. I mean, this is an uncompromising budget. It's not the Tea Party manifesto because it's a balanced approach that calls for compromise. It's a very hard-edged ideological document, and that has rallied a lot of Tea Party support that I guess Mitt Romney thought he needed. But I think it will leave centrist voters cold because they're looking for pragmatic solutions. They're looking for a more balanced approach to the budget and the national economy, and the president has presented that.
Have you been to Republican conventions before?
I actually have.
Really?
I have. I was in Minneapolis for a short period of time, but I'm not going to, I don't make a habit of staying too long. I'll be here for 24 hours to talk about the Romney-Ryan plan because I know it pretty well.
Have you been heckled? I mean, how's it been like?
Actually, I've gotten a very nice, warm response. Now, that being said, I haven't been here that long, so I'll be out of here.
You always say that. And in fact, you have to read what he put down on our virtual guest book here. I'm in the lion's den and haven't been eaten yet.
So I better get out of here quick.
So you better get out because once they figure out you're up
Don't
here.
Don't tell anybody that, Amy.
I won't. And the last time I saw the congressman, we were at the Montgomery County Fair together.
That's exactly right.
I was also eating one of those very big funnel cakes. It's quite good.
And I was trying to win one of those games that you can never win.
All right.
Actually, we got a big stuffed animal at the end.
You did.
Well done.
Oh, very well done.
That's better than you may do this week. Well, Congressman Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, we'll see you, I'm sure,
Thank you, Bob.
next week in Charlotte as well.
Yes, indeed.
That's right.
Debate. We talked a little bit earlier, Amy, about what it's going to be like for Paul Ryan on that debate stage. We really don't know. I mean, that's one of the fun things about picking a relative unknown for a position like this is we really don't have a sense of what he's going to be like, what his idiosyncrasies are going to be like.
Well, and look, Congressman Van Hollen knows better than anybody. This guy can debate the budget and numbers at any time with a tremendous amount of confidence. But you know what these debates are going to be about. They're going to be about foreign policy. They're going to be about being able to talk about a whole host of issues, not just the budget. So I think that's where we're going to have some real interesting back and forth. Joe Biden, obviously, much more comfortable talking about this broad range of issues than Paul Ryan, who hasn't had to do it before.
That's exactly right.
All right. So remember, this is an interactive process. We've been talking to you guys about this. This is the beauty of life in the internet age, is that we can get a whole lot of data now almost instantly about what people are saying, thinking, feeling about what's going on behind us. We don't have to wait for polls. We don't have to wait for the Nielsen ratings. And to help us with that, hello, Phoebe.
Hi, Amy.
How are you doing?
I am doing great.
From Yahoo.com, of course. Tell us what you're picking up in the social sphere right now, just about what people are talking about and what you guys are looking for tonight. I know you're working on some cool projects, so if you can give us an idea what that is.
Well, the first thing I wanted to talk about is we've been tracking to see how people feel about the convention, how they feel about the speakers, the program overall.
Like a positive, negative sentiments.
Exactly. And last night we were really sort of pleasantly surprised to see that Ann Romney really kind of changed the conversation. Around politics, it tends to go negative. People have strong opinions, but Ann Romney got overwhelming positive reaction to her speech last night. So overall, the sentiment around the convention last night was more positive than it was negative. But we're tracking that because so far this evening, it's going back into the negative. And we're really curious to see at the end of the evening, we'll come back with a report on this, whether Paul Ryan, manages to keep it as positive as Ann did last night.
So what happened when Ann Romney went out there that you saw the shift in sentiment?
Well, two things that were really interesting. I mean, first of all, Chris Christie, for example, the sentiment around his speech was pretty much evenly split. But with Ann Romney, she was 68% positive, and only 32% of the people who were talking about her on Twitter had anything negative to say about her. We also saw last night that there was a hashtag that actually cropped up. It wasn't something the campaign was trying to push out, but just people were so excited, they created their own hashtag around Ann Romney.
What was it?
I stand with Ann.
I stand with Ann. So that was created organically. And how did it do vis-a-vis the GOP 2012 one, the one that they're putting out there officially?
I will pull that up for you, and I will report back, or I'll shoot it to your iPhones, and you can share it with everybody.
Oh, right. We have iPhones somewhere on
the mix over here.
Do you have a sense of how their hashtagging efforts are playing, whether that's having a big impact in the tweeting community?
Well, it's interesting. We haven't tracked
tweeting community.
That's the official way
community.
to describe it. Thank you very much.
Community.
Yes.
The hashtags that are put out by any organization, any campaign, never tend to do as well as the ones that come up from the grassroots. So, we've been tracking, for example, tonight's theme has its own hashtag, and we're seeing how it's doing. It's doing okay, but the ones that come up from the grassroots still tend overall to do better than the ones that are tried to be pushed out by organizations.
So we don't know yet what that grassroots hashtag is going to be, right?
Who knows? I mean, I'm sure maybe it's something that comes out of one of the speeches tonight, a catchphrase. The other thing that we kind of track, which is really interesting, is the life cycle of these hashtags. It starts where people are just passing it around. They're sharing that key moment, that clip, that phrase that everyone is talking about. And one of the things we're looking at right now is all the hashtags around building it.
Yeah.
At this point in the cycle, one of the things we've seen is that people using it are making jokes about building it. They're not talking about campaign speeches. They're not talking about any official policy things. They're making jokes about what they have or haven't built, or, ribbing a colleague about it.
It does seem to me that this is, it's a very surface level way to take advantage of social media. They're putting the tweets up there. Certainly, they're putting the hashtag out there, but I don't see the sense of them bringing that to the next level. Use it to an organizing tool. Use it as some kind of a rallying thing. It's a difficult thing to do. Obviously, no party has really done it that successfully.
Well, and some of it I think is just about having that conversation. Sometimes it's not so much that you're necessarily going to get a direct action off of it, but if you're getting people to talk about your message and at least engage with it, that's something right there.
All right. Phoebe Connolly, thank you very much. We're going to go look at the floor right now because another man who was obviously very active in the 2008 campaign, Governor Tim Pawlenty of Minnesota, former governor.
to Barack Obama's retirement party. Four years ago, we came together for this convention back in my home state of Minnesota. And a lot's happened since then. We've had 4 years of Barack Obama in the White House. Ah, the Obama White House. One bad decision follows another. It's hard to say exactly just what his worst mistake has been. There's so many to choose from. The stimulus, his energy policy, Obamacare, taxes, Joe Biden. Now, I hear Joe's particularly interested in tonight's proceedings. He even thought about coming here to Tampa, and he's taking notes. Because when Paul Ryan speaks, Joe will finally get to hear what a real vice president sounds like. But you know, President Obama isn't as bad as people say. He's actually worse. The president takes more vacations than that guy on the bizarre food show. And I'll give Barack Obama credit for creating jobs these last 4 years. For golf caddies. Actually, Barack Obama is the first president to create more excuses than jobs. In his view, it's Georgia's fault. It's the bank's fault. It's Europe's fault. It's the weather's fault. It's Congress's fault. Mr. President, if you want to find fault, I suggest you look in the mirror. I've come to realize that Barack Obama is the tattoo president. Like a big tattoo, it seemed cool when we were young. But later on, that decision doesn't look so good. And you wonder, what was I thinking? But the worst part is, you're going to have to explain it to your kids. Next week, Barack Obama will plead with America to give his failed policies and ideas another chance. He's asking Americans to give him more time and more money. Well, sorry, Mr. President, but you're out of time and we're out of money. Barack Obama's failed us. But look, it's understandable. A lot of people fail at their first job. Now, our opponents claim to be the party of the middle class, but Democrats don't understand this fundamental point. It's really hard for people to be part of the middle class if they don't have a job. Now, I know a bit about these things. I grew up in a meatpacking town. For much of his life, my dad was a truck driver. My mom was a homemaker. She died when I was 16 years old. And my dad lost his job not long after that. I was the only one of 5 kids in our family who had a chance to go to college. when I traveled the country these past few years.
All right, well, there was, I almost said Mitt Romney. Well,
let's call him Tim Pawlenty.
Let's call him Tim Pawlenty, who, remember, when he was running for president, folks said, maybe he's a little too Minnesota nice. Maybe, you know, can he really go toe-to-toe with Barack Obama? Can he really go toe-to-toe with his Republicans that he was competing against? He's out there right now really making a pretty impassioned case against Barack Obama, really in an attack mode right now.
He's stepping on a lot of toes, and if you want to see him continue to step and continue to talk, you can watch it at abcnews.com. You can also watch it on our iPad app, all the streaming coverage all night long.
That's right. All right, Jordan Fabian now joining us from Univision. And Jordan, you know, we got a big speech that's right around the corner. Paul Ryan. We're asking folks, you know, what Paul Ryan needs to do, how he can relate. What can Paul Ryan do in terms of talking to Latino voters that that Mitt Romney either can't or hasn't been able to do yet?
Well, Paul Ryan's known for having, obviously, his budget plan, but the thing is that Latinos really don't know who Paul Ryan is. I think 41% of Latinos just don't know who he is. So tonight is his big chance to really define his plan for a national audience, especially Latinos who really don't know who he is. I think twice as many Latinos just are unaware of Paul Ryan compared to the general population.
So, all right, so are there issues that he needs to start talking to? Medicare is his big one. Is that going to be a voting issue for Latinos, for young Latinos, the way that he's framing this big argument?
Well, I think since Medicare is more for seniors, it's going to not be as big of an issue. The Latino population is very young, so I think that programs like Medicaid and food stamps. Yeah, sure.
But his call for Medicare, exactly what he's talking about, is an appeal to another generation. His version of the Medicare argument is designed for Gen Xers and younger.
I think that could definitely be a winning message if he frames it right. At the same time, I think other people are going to draw attention to what he wants to do with Medicaid and food stamps. He wants to enact big cuts to those, and Latinos disproportionately rely on those programs. You know, Latinos, their household wealth, their median household wealth has declined 66% over the last 4 years. The household wealth is $7,000 on average. So those are big programs. They're very important in the community. So obviously, as he tries to talk about his Medicare plan, I'm sure Democrats are going to be talking about his Medicaid plan and his plan for food stamps.
Well, the other issue that's getting a lot of attention here in this hall, I'm curious how it plays with the Latino community, is the Obamacare. It's a health care law. And there are plenty of Democrats who say, look, for Latino voters, the Obamacare is actually a positive. It's not seen as negatively as it's seen in other communities. We want to talk about how that issue plays out, and can Barack Obama try to sell Obamacare specifically to Latinos? Would that work?
Absolutely, and that's already underway. I mean, he barely talks about Obamacare on the campaign trail, but if you look at the Spanish language advertising, that's the #1 topic he talks about. It's much more popular in the Latino community than it is in the general population, so he's going to stress that. And, you know, we saw Ted Cruz, the Texas Senate candidate, talk about repealing Obamacare, as well as many other people on the stage, and I'm sure that's going to be a really big issue as the campaign enters its final stretch.
So what states are you watching? We know where the Latino vote typically is, but are there some rising states that are part of it? Obviously, Florida is one that's always on everyone's radar screen, but what else is on your radar screen?
Well, obviously the ones out west, Nevada and Colorado, but there's two that you wouldn't typically think about that are kind of interesting, Virginia and North Carolina. The Latino population there has exploded over the last decade. It's still small compared to a place like Florida, but in a state where it's going to come down to the margin of error, that small amount of Latinos, let's say 50,000, 60,000 voters, could really make a difference. So we've actually seen a lot of spending on Spanish language ads there and things like that, really heavy campaigning, so that'll be something to watch.
So you still think North Carolina is in play in this election? There are a lot of folks who think that that's a real stretch for the president to be able to still hold on to that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really tough, but if he has any path to victory, it's through the Latino community.
All right, talk to us about immigration reform. We hear so much about it, and Amy talked about it earlier as a threshold issue. You got to get over that threshold. Republicans came close several years ago to passing comprehensive immigration reform, but has a whole crop of Republicans really alienated Latino voters with their harsh rhetoric on this?
You know, it's funny. I'm walking around the halls here, and I'm finding there's a split personality in the Republican Party over immigration. There's a lot of people like Jeb Bush who you talk to who really want to, change the party's tone and the way they handle the issue. But there's those like Jen Brewer and Chris Kobach who have had a big influence here. They've changed the platform, so it's really interesting to see play out.
Jordan Fabian from Univision, thanks for being here. We'll check in with you these couple of weeks. Really appreciate it. We're going to go to the floor right now where former Governor Mike Huckabee is speaking.
We're going to say we sure can do better than Huckabee. And that's when they will unanimously nominate Mitt Romney to be the next president of the United States of America. I want to say that Tampa has been a wonderful and hospitable city, and I'm grateful for all that they've done for us. But the only hitch in an otherwise perfect week was the awful noise coming from the hotel room next door to mine. Turns out it was just Debbie Wasserman Schultz practicing her speech for the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte next week. Bless her heart. 4 years ago, Mitt Romney and I were opponents. We still are, but we're not opposing each other. No, we are mutual opponents of the miserably failed experiments that have put this country in a downward spiral. The United States of America was originally an experiment, but it was an experiment in recognizing God-given individual liberty and creating a government in which no one is deemed better than another, and in which all of us are equal. Not equal in abilities, but equal in intrinsic worth and value. It is the essence, not just of who we are, but what we are. Now, let me just say to those who question how once rivals can be now united, it's quite simple. We have Barack Obama to thank. It was Barack Obama who said, "You didn't build it." Translation, it doesn't belong to you. Well, no small differences among us in our party approximate the vast differences between the liberty-limiting, radical left-wing, anti-business, reckless spending, tax-hiking party of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, and Nancy Pelosi versus an energized America who knows we can do better. For 4 years, we've given a chance to a man with very limited experience in governing, no experience in business whatsoever, and since taking office, mostly interested in campaigning, blaming, and aiming excuses at his predecessor, the Republicans, and people in business, or as Republicans like to call them, employers. We've stagnated into an economy that has taken all that hope right down the slope and has left millions without jobs, forced out of their homes by foreclosure, herded into dependency upon a government that promises us candy but gives us cavities. Barack Obama seems intent on enrolling more people on food stamps. Mitt Romney's focus is going to be on generating more jobs that will make food stamps unnecessary for them. We know full well we can do better. Mitt Romney turned around companies that were on the skids. He turned around a scandal-ridden Olympics that was deep in the red into a high point of profit and patriotic pride. And he turned around a very liberal state when he erased a deficit and replaced it with a surplus. Do you remember when Barack Obama said that if he couldn't turn things around in 3 years, it'd be a one-term proposition? Well, it's been almost 4 years. I say let's make him a proposition he can't refuse. Let's vote him out. I understand that the job of president is admittedly tougher than running a company, an Olympic contest, or a Commonwealth. But when one sees what even Bill Clinton noted was a sterling record of problem solving that has marked the life of Mitt Romney, we are confident that we will do better. I am thrilled to say Mitt Romney has been loyal to his lovely wife, who knocked it out of the park last night in this arena. He's been loyal to his sons, to his country, to his employees, and to his church. Well, I'm sure now that the press is going to tell you he isn't perfect. But my friends, for the past 4 years, we've tried the one that the press thought was perfect, and that hasn't worked out all that well for us. That's why tonight I tell you, we can do better. Our founding fathers left taxation and tyranny, seeking religious liberty and a society of meritocracy rather than aristocracy. What they created was a bold experiment in government, believing that God gave us unalienable rights, and that the role of government is simply to make sure that those rights are protected. So fearful were they that the government would grow beyond their intention, that even after crafting our magnificent Constitution, they said, we can do even better. They added amendments. We call them the Bill of Rights. Those Bill of Rights limit what the government can do, and they guarantee what we, the people, have the unimpeded right to do, whether to speak, assemble, worship, pray, publish, or even refuse intrusions into our homes. Many of those founders died to pass on that heritage. They had lived under the boot of big government, and what they said was, we can do better. As a kid growing up in a household, my dad never finished high school. I grew up in a family in which no male upstream from me had ever finished high school, much less gone to college. But I was taught that even though there was nothing I could do about what was behind me, I could change everything about what was in front of me. My working poor parents told me that I could do better.
All right, well, that was Mike Huckabee, who obviously knows a little something about giving speeches to rile up a crowd. He was a populist, very, very popular in 2008. Of course, beat Mitt Romney. He was once his adversary, defeated him in Iowa. We thought he was going to maybe go the distance toe-to-toe, but didn't get as much juice as he thought he did in 2008. But now he is
honored
an ally.
with a big speech tonight. And if you want to continue to watch it, it's at abcnews.com or on our ABC News iPad app. And of course, our Twitter hashtag is #2012GOP. I am at Rick Klein, and this is at Amy E. Walter.
And this, sitting right next to us, is Ryan Call, although I don't know your Twitter handle. What is it?
It's Ryan R. Call. It's
okay.
Pretty easy.
All right, there you go.
Ryan R. Call, that Twitter handle, is the chairman of the Colorado Republican Party. And in fact, we have to tell you, we were just sitting here a few minutes ago with George Will. I asked him, if you could know the outcome of one state in this election, what state would that be? He said Colorado.
And I think he's spot on.
All right, so tell us why Colorado is going to be so important, and how does Mitt Romney compete in a state where there is, it seems to many people, a demographic advantage for Barack Obama?
Well, I'll tell you, Colorado is an important pivotal swing state. After Ohio and Florida, Colorado finds itself in the old electoral college math at really that must-win state for either camp. The issues that are impacting Colorado and the issues that are important to our voters really in many ways are the same issues that are impacting around the country. But among Hispanics, among women, and among young people, those are the issues and of jobs and the economy that we're really focusing our efforts on.
So can Mitt Romney win Colorado without doing appreciably better among Latinos than John McCain did.
He does need to do better, and we are making significant strides within those members of our community. The issues of entrepreneurship, about creating opportunities for education, and especially as it relates to the current status of the economy and jobs. That's the contrast that Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan bring to the table versus the failed record of Barack Obama.
Give me a sense of the temperature in your delegation right now. How are they on Mitt Romney, 1 to 10?
I'd say probably about an 8. Actually, over the last few days in particular, we're seeing a real sense of unification. Everybody really understands the stakes that we're facing in Colorado, and they are incredibly high.
And, I mean, did you see, I think what you're getting at, of course, is the fact that Mitt Romney lost the caucuses in Colorado. It was considered something of a surprise. Was that just to send him a message? What was that about?
That was exactly that. I mean, he had overwhelmingly won the caucuses back in 2008, and so he had that base of support. But Colorado found itself very early in the primary contest, and I think the grassroots activists of our state, in many ways, were kind of speaking on behalf of a lot of the grassroots, saying, we want you to be talking about substantive, important issues, and that's what this election is going to be about. And that's why I think it really plays to Mitt Romney's and Paul Ryan's strengths. It's a big election about big things.
So what would your advice to Mitt Romney be? How do you make him go from 8 to 10 or 11?
Well, I'll tell you, I think he needs to be keep doing exactly what he is doing, keeping that focus directly on the issues of jobs and the economy. Obviously, we heard from Ann Romney yesterday, and her warmth and charisma on the campaign trail will go a very far way in helping persuade over a lot of those women voters that you have to win in Colorado if you're going to be successful. Those are the kinds of things I think he needs just to keep doing.
A lot of Democrats looked at Colorado and they looked to the Senator Bennett race from 2 years ago and said the reason that Bennett won that race was because of the issue of abortion, and they were able to make that a key issue for those women voters. They obviously think they can replicate that this year. They're spending a lot of time on that issue against Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney. How effective is it at the presidential level?
I don't think that those attacks are really sticking. I mean, this is a guy who was being accused, at least in the primary, of being too moderate. And so for the Democrats to try to turn that on its head and make him into some sort of extremist, it just doesn't stick. He's too nice. He's too credible. His character just comes through in a way where those kinds of attacks are just not going to stick. And again, his strengths are dealing with the issues that are most important to the people in the state of Colorado, jobs, the economy, and really getting ourselves back on the kind of course we need to be on.
All right, Ryan Call, you are going to be a man with a lot to do in the next 69 days, and,
yes,
and he had a very nice little map here.
Those are mountains.
Those
are mountains.
That's
the
Rocky
Rocky Mountains.
Range, right?
That's exactly
This is
right.
the front range, and I know a lot about the state because you have a great state.
We have a gorgeous state.
It is beautiful, and then right about here, right, Arapahoe
County,
and
Jefferson County.
Wait, that's supposed to be Colorado? I don't want to nitpick, but that's an easy state to draw. What just happened up there?
We're trying.
All right.
It's fingers.
Fair enough. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Ryan.
Ryan.
Appreciate you being here.
Really appreciate it.
My great pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You know, I love that Colorado's a swing state because it means that I can at least maybe use it as an excuse to spend a little more time in a state that is, as we noted, quite beautiful. And what is also great about the state of Colorado, it really does come down to 2 counties there, Arapahoe and Jefferson in the Denver suburbs. You can sit in those 2 counties and know the outcome of that election. And
you can enjoy the scenery at the same time.
You can enjoy the scenery, and they have great handcrafted beer and great skiing and great mountain biking. So you can't really get better than that.
We are approaching the primetime hour of the programming, which means that we're going to start seeing some of the heavy hitters of the lineup tonight. We're expecting Condoleezza Rice shortly before the top of the hour, and of course the 10 to 11 hour is the one that will be anchored by Paul Ryan. That is the moment that we wait for. Mike Huckabee's speech continuing. If you want to be watching Mike Huckabee instead of us, I can't imagine why that would be. However, if you do want to see what Mike Huckabee say, you can be happy to log on to our website, abcnews.com. Watch it on the iPad as well. We'll be here all night, pound 2012 GOP.
That's right. Now, we just talked to Ryan Call from the Colorado Republican Party. We're about to talk to 2 folks who work a lot with those local parties, the people working at the grassroots level to try to get more Republicans elected. I have with me David Avella, Frank Donatelli from GoPac. You know a little bit about this farm team. In fact, this is what Rick and I have been talking a lot about, and I know it's kind of the buzz of this this convention is just how deep the bench is for Republicans looking forward into whether it's 2016 or 2020 and beyond. Can you tell us a little bit, looking forward, who you guys think is sort of the next big thing beyond the ones that we're going to know?
Surprise us.
We already know about Marco Rubio. We already know about, right, Scott Walker. Who are the men and women who are coming up who are going to make an impact?
Well, first of all, we had such a great 2010 that we now have more state legislators who are Republican, over 4,000 than at any time since 1928.
Wow.
Neither David or I were around for that landslide.
Yeah.
So you're asking us to pick from a lot of people. However, you know, if you want to mention a couple, Will, right here in Florida, Will Weatherford is going to be the Speaker of the Florida House, and he's a great up-and-coming young conservative. T.W. Shannon, first African-American Speaker in Oklahoma, is an up-and-coming young leader. Mary Linda Garcia in New Hampshire, Hispanic reformer, woman legislator up there. So there's only 3, David. You probably can come up with a couple more.
Here in Florida, Ana Terry Flores, state senator in the Miami area. You have out in the western part of the state, Libby Szabo in Colorado. So, as Frank said, go around the country. We have a lot of people to keep an eye on.
And the good news, Amy, it's a much more diverse party at the grassroots. We have women, we have African Americans.
Speaking of
a woman,
to the stage.
We're gonna go pick up some Condoleezza Rice at her speech right now, getting a very strong reception here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, distinguished delegates. Good evening, fellow Republicans. Good evening, my fellow Americans. We gather here at a time of significance and challenge. This young century has been a difficult one. I can remember as if it were yesterday when my young assistant came into my office at the White House to say that a plane had hit the World Trade Center, and then a second plane, and then a third plane, the Pentagon. And later we would learn that a plane had crashed into a field in Pennsylvania, driven into the ground by brave souls who died so that others might live. From that day on, our sense of vulnerability and our concepts of security were never the same again. Then in 2008, the global financial and economic crisis would stun us. And it still reverberates as we deal with unemployment and economic uncertainty and bad policies that cast a pall over an American economy and a recovery that is desperately needed at home and abroad. And we have seen that the desire for liberty and freedom is indeed universal as men and women in the Middle East rise up to seize it. Yet the promise of the Arab Spring is engulfed in uncertainty. Internal strife and hostile neighbors are challenging the young, fragile democracy of Iraq. Dictators in Iran and Syria butcher their people and threaten regional security. Russia and China prevent a response, and everyone asks, where does America stand? Indeed, that is the question of the hour. Where does America stand? You see, when friends or foes alike don't know the answer to that question unambiguously and clearly, the world is likely to be a more dangerous and chaotic place. Since World War II, the United States has had an answer to that question. We stand for free peoples and free markets. We will defend and support them. We will sustain a balance of power that favors freedom. Now, to be sure, the burdens of leadership have been heavy. I know, as you do, the sacrifice of Americans, especially the sacrifice of many of our bravest in the ultimate sacrifice. But our armed forces are the sure shield and foundation of liberty, and we are so fortunate that we have men and women in uniform who volunteer. They volunteer to defend us at the front lines of freedom, and we owe them our eternal gratitude. Too, that it has not always been easy, though it has been rewarding, to speak for those who would otherwise not have a voice. The religious dissident in China, the democracy advocate in Venezuela, the political prisoner in Iran. It has been hard to muster the resources to support fledgling democracies and to intervene on behalf of the most desperate. The AIDS orphan in Uganda, the refugee fleeing Zimbabwe, the young woman who has been trafficked into the sex trade in Southeast Asia. It has been hard, yet this assistance, together with the compassionate work of private charities, people of conscience and people of faith, has shown the soul of our country. And I know too, that there is a weariness. I know that it feels as if we have carried these burdens long enough. But we can only know that there is no choice, because one of two things will happen if we don't lead. Either no one will lead and there will be chaos, or someone will fill the vacuum who does not share our values. My fellow Americans, we do not have a choice. We cannot be reluctant to lead, and you cannot lead from behind. Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan understand this reality. Our well-being at home and our leadership abroad are inextricably linked. They know what to do. They know that our friends and allies must again be able to trust us. From Israel to Colombia, from Poland to the Philippines, our allies and friends have to know that we will be reliable and consistent and determined. And our foes can have no reason to doubt our resolve, because peace really does come through strength. Our military capability and our technological advantage will be safe in Mitt Romney's hands. We must work for an open global economy and pursue free and fair trade to grow our exports and our influence abroad. If you are worried about the rise of China, just consider this. The United States has ratified only 3 trade agreements in the last few years, and those were negotiated in the Bush administration. China has signed 15 free trade agreements and is in the progress of negotiating as many as 18 more. Sadly, we are abandoning the field of free and fair trade, and it will come back to haunt us. We must not allow the chance to attain energy independence, to slip from our grasp. We are blessed with the gift of oil and gas resources here in North America, and we must develop them. We can develop them sensitively, we can develop them securing our environment, but we must develop them. And we have the ingenuity to develop alternative sources of energy too. But most importantly, Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan will rebuild the foundation of our strength, the American economy, stimulating private sector growth and stimulating small business entrepreneurship. When the world looks at us today, they see an American government that cannot live within its means. They see an American government that continues to borrow money that will mortgage the future of generations to come. The world knows that when a nation loses control of its finances, it eventually loses control of its destiny. That is not the America that has inspired people to follow our lead. After all, when the world looks to America, they look to us because we are the most successful economic and political experiment in human history. That is the true basis of American exceptionalism. You see, the essence of America, what really unites us, is not nationality or ethnicity or religion. It is an idea. And what an idea it is. That you can come from humble circumstances and you can do great things. That it does not matter where you came from, it matters where you are going. My fellow Americans, ours has never been a narrative of grievance and entitlement. We have never believed that I am doing poorly because you are doing well. We have never been jealous of one another and never envious of each other's successes. No, ours has been a belief in opportunity, and it has been a constant struggle, long and hard, up and down, to try to extend the benefits of the American dream to all. But that American ideal is indeed endangered today. There is no country, no, not even a rising China, that can do more harm to us than we can do to ourselves if we do not do the hard work before us here at home. More than at any other time in history, greatness is built on mobilizing human potential and ambition. We have always done that better than any country in the world. People have come here from all over because they have believed our creed of opportunity and limitless horizons. They have come here from the world's most impoverished nations just to make a decent wage. And they have come here from advanced societies as engineers and scientists to fuel the knowledge-based revolution in the Silicon Valley of California, in the Research Triangle of North Carolina, along Route 128 in Massachusetts, in Austin, Texas, and across this great land. Must continue to welcome the world's most ambitious people to be a part of us. In that way, we stay young and optimistic and determined. We need immigration laws that protect our borders, meet our economic needs, and yet show that we are a compassionate nation of immigrants. We have been successful too because Americans have known that one status at birth is not a permanent condition. Americans have believed that you might not be able to control your circumstances, but you can control your response to your circumstances. And your greatest ally in controlling your response to your circumstances has been a quality education. But today, when I can look at your zip code and I can tell whether you're going to get a good education, can I honestly say it doesn't matter where you came from, it matters where you're going. The crisis in K-12 education is a threat to the very fabric of who we are. My mom was a teacher. I respect the profession. We need great teachers, not poor ones and not mediocre ones. We have to have high standards for our kids because self-esteem comes from achievement, not from lax standards and false praise. And we need to give parents greater choice, particularly poor parents whose kids, very often minorities, are trapped in failing neighborhood schools. This is the civil rights issue of our day. If we do anything less, we condemn generations to joblessness and hopelessness and life on the government dole. If we do anything less, we will endanger our global imperatives for competitiveness. And if we do anything less, we will tear apart the fabric of who we are and cement the turn toward entitlement and grievance. Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan will rebuild us at home, and they will help us lead abroad. They will provide an answer to the question, where does America stand? The challenge is real, and the times are hard. But America has met and overcome hard challenges before. Whenever you find yourself doubting us, just think about all those times that America made the impossible seem inevitable in retrospect. Our revolutionary founding against the greatest military power of the time, a civil war, brother against brother, hundreds of thousands dead on both sides, but we emerged a more perfect union. A second founding when impatient patriots were determined to overcome the birth defect of slavery and the scourge of segregation. A long struggle against communism with the Soviet Union eventually in collapse and Europe whole, free, and at peace. And in the aftermath of 9/11, the willingness to take really hard decisions that secured us and prevented the follow-on attack that everybody thought preordained. And on a personal note, a little girl grows up in Jim Crow, Birmingham, the segregated city of the South where her parents can't take her to a movie theater or to a restaurant. But they have her absolutely convinced that even if she can't have a hamburger at the Woolworth's lunch counter, she could be President of the United States if she wanted to be, and she becomes the Secretary of State. has a way of making the impossible seem inevitable in retrospect, but we know it was never inevitable. It took leadership, and it took courage, and it took belief in our values. Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan have the integrity and the experience and the vision to lead us. They know who we are. They know who we want to be. They know who we are in the world and what we offer. That is why this is a moment and an election of consequence. Because it just has to be that the freest and most compassionate country on the face of the earth will continue to be the most powerful and a beacon for prosperity and liberty across the world. God bless you, and God bless this extraordinary country, this exceptional country, the United States of America.
Condoleezza Rice just gave a speech that brought this Tampa convention center to its feet. I mean, this is a woman, we knew she was going to come out and talk about foreign policy. We knew that that was an issue where she could give some credibility to a ticket that is still working to get their bona fides, but she really got it on a whole other level than just foreign policy. Education, American dream, etc.
I find it impossible to overstate the extent to which this speech had it all. This arena came alive. People were actually listening to the speech. They were digesting it. They were eager to hear every word of it. And it was so much bigger than the Condi Rice that we know from her typical biography. It was a broad narrative. And a lot of folks were seeing the tweets out there, and we're running a lot of them on the screen right now. Keep hashtagging it GOP2012. A lot of people are asking, this got to be a woman who's running for something. All of a sudden, I believe that VP buzz that was going on for all those months. You know, whatever her ambitions are, this was just a remarkable, no teleprompter. She was glancing down at notes, and just a tremendous story, if nothing else, to weave together all the elements of her own life, of her experience in the Bush administration. She did not just stick to national security and foreign policy. She cut a very wide swath, and I think was an absolute hit here.
And I think part of it is that she touched on every single issue that this convention is trying to drive home to voters. Opportunity is a big piece of that, the American dream, this idea that everybody in America can, no matter how they grew up, what their circumstance was. She talks about growing up, of course, in the segregated South, can rise to the highest level possible. That's a message you've heard Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan deliver, but when you hear Condoleezza Rice deliver it, it really resonates in a way, because you know what she's had to overcome to get where she is, and the fact that she is up there giving that stamp of credibility to the party and the ticket becomes very important.
Well, I should also know this is probably the only time you're going to see sustained Bush imagery on that stage. Those pictures framing her of these people like Don Rumsfeld and Colin Powell, and of course President Bush himself. None of them are in attendance here in Tampa, and there was no mention in that speech of Iraq, really of much of the Bush foreign policy. They're proud of elements of their record, but it's as if the Iraq War never happened, and Condi Rice is telling tonight. And as any convention speech goes, it's going to be a selective reading of history. And something that's designed to bring people together. And I think the people in this crowd, they like that story that she was able to tell.
Right. Well, and behind us right now is Governor Susana Martinez, the governor of New Mexico, the very first Latina elected governor in anywhere in the country. And I think what we learned from this week, from the two nights that we've been here thus far, is that it's really the women who have driven this convention, right? I mean, we know that they are going to be the deciding vote in the election, and if they need somebody who can go out there and talk to it, they got a lot of women up there to be good surrogates.
And I'll tell you, Paul Ryan now has his work cut out for him, because Condi Rice just gave the speech at the convention so far, for my money. That was a tremendous performance, and I think it's going to put more pressure on Paul Ryan to deliver. People are going to be more interested, obviously, in what he has to say, but this Condi Rice performance, I think, does a lot for Mitt Romney. He's looking for that stamp of credibility. He's looking for some national security and foreign policy credentials. He's looking for a story. And I think Condi found it.
That's right. I think that's a very good point. And, as we're talking about the challenge that Paul Ryan has to follow that, we wanted to give you a little idea of who Paul Ryan is, get a sense of what he's done. And there's nobody who has covered Paul Ryan in deeper form than our own John Carlo, who's been with them on the Hill for quite some time. Take a look.
Paul Ryan is 42, married for 12 years with 3 kids, a graduate of Miami of Ohio, elected to Congress from Janesville, Wisconsin at 28. He's chairman of the House Budget Committee. Paul Ryan is the Republican numbers guy, defined by his sweeping budget plan that would slash spending and transform Medicare. It's so controversial that when he first proposed it 4 years ago, only 8 Republicans supported it. Later, he issued a challenge.
This is not the time to go wobbly. They're going to run these attack ads at us regardless. This is a time for leaders to be leaders.
Now they're virtually all on board. He's intensely driven, from his punishing workouts to his hunting to his politics. A mailroom intern on Capitol Hill at 22, he became a congressman 6 years later. He met his wife Jana on a blind date. She's from a family of prominent Democrats from Oklahoma, but she's a Republican now. Ryan does have private sector experience, but it's different than Romney's. Fitness instructor, a waiter, he drove the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, and he flipped burgers at McDonald's. The manager at McDonald's, Ryan says, didn't think he had the personal skills to work the counter. Don't know where that manager is now, but Paul Ryan sure's come a long way.
I would love to find that McDonald's manager to see how he feels now.
You didn't think that going anywhere.
And listen, don't all of us, there's a teacher that you want to look to out there that said, remember you thought I was like the kid that was kind of the screw up. Now look at me. But anyway.
Yeah, and look, as John gets at there is an appeal to Paul Ryan that Mitt Romney simply doesn't have. You could talk about whatever your upbringing is. There's an authentic Midwestern, blue-collar background that Paul Ryan has. And it fits well with the exact voters that the Republican Party needs.
That's exactly right. Remember, 4 years ago, there was another Midwestern blue-collar guy who came up to try to sell Barack Obama to those same voters. His name was Joe Biden from Scranton, Pennsylvania. He talked a lot about Scranton, Pennsylvania in that speech. He talked a lot about his family, his upbringing. He mentioned his mom. I mean, it feels very similar, and we've talked about this throughout the night, that group of voters that are so important to folks in this campaign, that white working-class vote, in places like Wisconsin, in places like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Obviously, the Latino vote, critical, but when you talk about who the vice presidential candidates, who they're going for, that demographic, you can see it in those industrial Midwestern states.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to overthink these things and say, well, how do you make this appeal? People fundamentally want someone they feel like they're comfortable, they get them, they're like them. And if Paul Ryan can do that, then Mitt Romney is taking care of a huge hole in his own resume. Because whatever you say about Mitt Romney, his upbringing was not typical, was not quintessentially American. He doesn't project the way George W. Bush does a sense of being one of us, being one of the guys, being one of a typical American. So if Paul Ryan can do that, that's just an enormous advantage.
Yeah, and I think, we know, for example, right now we're getting worried about the fact that his family's here. They're sitting in the box. They're waiting for him, and you got to wonder what kind of pressure is on a candidate right now. Not just because the whole auditorium and so many people are tuning in to watch you, but doing this in front of your family has to be such an emotional process. We saw him on the trail a couple weeks ago, right after he was picked, get really teared up and emotional when he went back home to Janesville. So as we heard from Senator Santorum, where he said, Mitt Romney needs to show a little bit of his vulnerability, we might see a little bit of that of Paul Ryan too, that humanity, that sense of who he is as a man and not just who he is as a candidate. And it's redefining himself in the minds of many people.
So just checking briefly on things going on outside the auditorium, we understand from the campaign tonight that the Romney folks have been in touch with governors in the region, that he's considering a trip into the Gulf Coast region that's being battered by the storm right now. They're working out the timing of that. It would seem unlikely to happen now before tomorrow, because that's the big night and because of everything that's going on in the region right now, but an opportunity to look presidential. And as Amy said, this is a big moment for the families as well. I'm always curious, those last conversations that go on. These are the biggest nights in someone's life. whether it's Mitt Romney or Paul Ryan here, that you're right, nerves get on you, and you're looking out there at this sea of so many people with their funny hats, and
You really are obsessed with the funny hats.
well, it is a big piece of the story out there, I think. So again, this is Susana Martinez, the governor of New Mexico. If you want to watch all of the floor action uninterrupted, you can watch it at abcnews.com and on our iPad app. In the meantime, we're going to be here all night. We're in the primetime hour, which means this is the time where we're going to see Paul Ryan and we're going to see the main keynote speakers of the night.
Yeah, and you know, the one thing that's so important to talk about with Susana Martinez is something we've driven home time and time again here about this next generation of leaders, the people that we're going to be talking about as we go into the future about presidential candidates. The thing about Susana Martinez, though, she's been very open about why she didn't want to be considered as a vice presidential candidate. And it's a very interesting story. It's a family story. And quite frankly, it's a story that so many of us, and especially so many women, have, and that's she's caring for her disabled sister. She has a father who has Alzheimer's, and she said in an interview, you know what, I cannot bring my sister all the way to Washington, D.C. and keep her away from my dad. My dad needs to see us all the time. This is so important for all of us, and that is just the kind of story that really can resonate when we think about how to talk to women voters, how to relate to them. I mean, I hear it time and again from women voters, the sense that people who are in politics don't have any idea what their life is like, that they are just caught up in policy and the politicking and the backstabbing. She has a real opportunity to make that case.
And what did you hear Ann Romney say just last night? Women, I love you. Exactly going after them as in explicit terms as you can. So we're to understand now from our Emily Friedman, a reporter covering the campaign, that Mitt Romney is not going to be attending Paul Ryan's speech. He's having pizza in his hotel room. And Amy, let me ask you about the optics of this, because the whole thing seems a little bit silly. So we know he was in town yesterday. He came here to greet his wife, Ann. Then he left and gave a speech. Now he's back. He is about 200 yards from where we're sitting right now. He's in a hotel room in a heavily fortified, secured zone, secured obviously because of his presence and the presence of so many dignitaries. Why not come across the street? Say hi to your vice president.
Yeah, maybe it's because of the security. He didn't want to have to go through all the mags and the lines. I mean, I've had to wait in those lines. They're kind of long. The walk's long. No, listen, this is a sprint now for the next 69 days, and Mitt Romney knows that, you know, first of all, he's got to rest up a little bit, and I think that's a big part of this. But I think another big piece of this, too, is letting Paul Ryan have his day, have his say. And the comparisons are going to get made. The issues are going to get raised about how these two differ. Well, now's the night for Paul Ryan.
Let's take a look how the Romney campaign's introducing Paul Ryan right now. Some interesting imagery.
Change course. Today's a good day for America, and there are better days ahead.
When I look at all he's done, his life, his wife, his family, I'm just so proud. I know his father would be as well, especially tonight.
I am so proud to introduce my husband, the next Vice President of the United States, Paul Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hey, Wisconsin. Thank you. Thank you. You guys are great. Thanks so much. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, delegates, and fellow citizens, I am honored by the support of this convention for Vice President of the United States.
I accept the duty to help lead our nation out of a jobs crisis and back to prosperity. And I know we can do this. I accept the calling of my generation to give our children the America that was given to us, with opportunity for the young and security for the old. And I know that we are ready. Our nominee is sure ready. His whole life prepared him for this moment, to meet serious challenges in a serious way, without excuses and idle words. After 4 years of getting the runaround, America needs a turnaround, and the man for the job is Governor Mitt Romney. I'm the newcomer to this campaign, so let me share a first impression. I have never seen opponents so silent about their record and so desperate to keep their power. They've run out of ideas. Their moment came and went. Fear and division is all they've got left. With all their attack ads, the president is just throwing away money. And he's pretty experienced at that. You see, some people can't be dragged down by the usual cheap tactics because their character, ability, and plain decency are so obvious. And ladies and gentlemen, that is Mitt Romney. For my part, your nomination is an unexpected turn. It certainly came as news to my family. And I'd like you to meet them. My best friend and wife, Jana, our daughter, Liza, and our boys, Charlie and Sam. The kids are happy to see their grandma, who lives in Florida. There she is, my mom, Betty. My dad, a small-town lawyer, was also named Paul. Until we lost him when I was 16, he was a gentle presence in my life. I'd like to think he'd be proud of me and my sister and brothers. You know what? I'm sure proud of him and where I come from, Janesville, Wisconsin. I live on the same block where I grew up. We belong to the same parish where I was baptized. Janesville is that kind of place. The people of Wisconsin have been good to me. I've tried to live up to their trust. And now, I ask those hardworking men and women and millions like them across America to join our cause and get this country working again. When Governor Romney asked me to join the ticket, I said, let's get this done. And that is exactly what we are going to do. President Barack Obama came to office during an economic crisis, as he has reminded us a time or two. Those are very tough days. And any fair measure of his record has to take that into account. My home state voted for President Obama. When he talked about change, many people liked the sound of it, especially in Janesville, where we were about to lose a major factory. A lot of guys I went to high school with worked at that GM plant. Right there at that plant, candidate Obama said, "I believe that if our government is there to support you, this plant will be here for another 100 years." That's what he said in 2008. Well, as it turned out, that plant didn't last another year. It is locked up and empty to this day. And that's how it is in so many towns, where the recovery that was promised is nowhere in sight. Right now, 23 million men and women are struggling to find work. 23 million people, unemployed or underemployed. Nearly 1 in 6 Americans is in poverty. Millions of young Americans have graduated from college during the Obama presidency, ready to use their gifts and get moving in life. Half of them can't find the work they studied for or any work at all. So here's the question. Without a change in leadership, why would the next 4 years be any different from the last 4 years? The first troubling sign came with the stimulus. It was President Obama's first and best shot at fixing the economy, at a time when he got everything he wanted under one-party rule. It cost $831 billion, the largest one-time expenditure ever by our federal government. It went to companies like Solyndra, with their gold-plated connections, subsidized jobs, and make-believe markets. The stimulus was a case of political patronage, corporate welfare, and cronyism at their worst. You, the American people of this country, were cut out of the deal. What did taxpayers get out of the Obama stimulus? More debt. That money wasn't just spent and wasted. It was borrowed, spent, and wasted. Maybe the greatest waste of all was time. Here we were, faced with a massive job crisis, so deep that if everyone out of work stood in single file, that unemployment line would stretch the length of the entire American continent. You would think that any president, whatever his party, would make job creation and nothing else his first order of economic business. But this president didn't do that. Instead, we got a long, divisive, all-or-nothing attempt to put the federal government in charge of health care. Obamacare comes to more than 2,000 pages of rules, mandates, taxes, fees, and fines that have no place in a free country. That's right. You know what? The president has declared that the debate over government-controlled health care is over. That will come as news to the millions of Americans who will elect Mitt Romney so we can repeal Obamacare. And the biggest, coldest power play of all in Obamacare came at the expense of the elderly. You see, even with all the hidden taxes to pay for the healthcare takeover, even with the new law and new taxes on nearly 1 million small businesses, the planners in Washington still didn't have enough money. They needed more. They needed hundreds of billions more. So they just took it all away from Medicare. $716 billion funneled out of Medicare by President Obama. An obligation we have to our parents and grandparents is being sacrificed, all to pay for a new entitlement we didn't even ask for. The greatest threat to Medicare is Obamacare, and we're going to stop it. In Congress, when they take out the heavy books and the wall charts about Medicare, my thoughts go back to a house on Garfield Street in Janesville. My wonderful grandma, Janet, had Alzheimer's, and she moved in with Mom and me. Though she felt lost at times, we did all the little things that made her feel loved. We had help from Medicare, and it was there, just like it's there for my mom today. Medicare is a promise, and we will honor it. A Romney-Ryan administration will protect and strengthen Medicare for my mom's generation, for my generation, and for my kids and yours. So our opponents can consider themselves on notice. In this election, on this issue, the usual posturing on the left isn't going to work. Mitt Romney and I know the difference between protecting a program and raiding it. Ladies and gentlemen, our nation needs this debate. We want this debate. We will win this debate. Obamacare, as much as anything else, explains why a presidency that began with such anticipation now comes to such a disappointing close. It began with a financial crisis. It ends with a job crisis. It began with a housing crisis they alone didn't cause. It ends with a housing crisis they didn't correct. It began with a perfect AAA credit rating for the United States. It ends with a downgraded America. It all started off with stirring speeches, Greek columns, the thrill of something new. Now, all that's left is a presidency adrift, surviving on slogans that already seem tired, grasping at a moment that has already passed, like a ship trying to sail on yesterday's wind. You know, President Obama was asked not long ago to reflect on any mistakes he might have made. He said, well, I haven't communicated enough. He said his job is to, quote, tell a story to the American people. As if that's the whole problem here? He needs to talk more, and we need to be better listeners? Ladies and gentlemen, these past 4 years, we have suffered no shortage of words in the White House. What is missing is leadership in the White House. And the story that Barack Obama does tell, forever shifting blame to the last administration, is getting old. The man assumed office almost 4 years ago. Isn't it about time he assumed responsibility? In this generation, a defining responsibility of government is to steer our nation clear of a debt crisis while there is still time. Back in 2008, candidate Obama called a $10 trillion national debt unpatriotic. Serious talk from what looked like a serious reformer. Yet by his own decisions, President Obama has added more debt than any other president before him, and more than all the troubled governments of Europe combined. One president, one term, $5 trillion in new debt. He created a new bipartisan debt commission. They came back with an urgent report. He thanked them, sent them on their way, and then did exactly nothing. Republicans stepped up with good faith reforms and solutions equal to the problems. How did the president respond? By doing nothing. Nothing except to dodge and demagogue the issue. So here we are, $16 trillion in debt, and still he does nothing. In Europe, massive debts have put entire governments at risk of collapse, and still he does nothing. And all we have heard from this president and his team are attacks on anyone who dares to point out the obvious. They have no answer to this simple reality. We need to stop spending money we don't have. Really simple. Not that hard. My dad used to say to me, "Son, you have a choice. You can be part of the problem, or you can be part of the solution." The present administration has made its choices, and Mitt Romney and I have made ours. Before the math and the momentum overwhelm us all, we are going to solve this nation's economic problems. And I'm going to level with you. We don't have that much time. But if we are serious and smart and we lead, we can do this. After 4 years of government trying to divide up the wealth, we will get America creating wealth again. With tax fairness and regulatory reform, we'll put government back on the side of men and women who create jobs and the men and women who need jobs. My mom started a small business, and I've seen what it takes. Mom was 50 when my dad died. She got on a bus every weekday for years and rode 40 miles each morning to Madison. She earned a new degree and learned new skills to start her small business. It wasn't just a new livelihood. It was a new life. And it transformed my mom from a widow in grief to a small businesswoman whose happiness wasn't just in the past. Her work gave her hope. It made our family proud. And to this day, my mom is my role model. Behind every small business, there's a story worth knowing. All the corner shops in our towns and cities, the restaurants, cleaners, gyms, hair salons, hardware stores, these didn't come out of nowhere. A lot of heart goes into each one. And if small business people say they made it on their own, all they're saying is that nobody else worked 7 days a week in their place. Nobody showed up in their place to open the door at 5 in the morning. Nobody did their thinking and worrying and sweating for them. After all that work, and in a bad economy, it sure doesn't help to hear from their president that government gets the credit. What they deserve to hear is the truth. Yes, you did build that. We have a plan for a stronger middle class with a goal of generating 12 million new jobs over the next 4 years. In a clean break from the Obama years, and frankly, from the years before this president, we will keep federal spending at 20% of GDP or less because that is enough. The choice is whether to put hard limits on economic growth or hard limits on the size of government. And we choose to limit government. I learned a good deal about economics and about America from the author of the Reagan tax reforms, the great Jack Kemp. What gave Jack that incredible enthusiasm was his belief in the possibilities of free people, in the power of free enterprise and strong communities to overcome poverty and despair. We need that same optimism right now. And in our dealings with other nations, a Romney-Ryan administration will speak with confidence and clarity. Whenever men and women rise up for their own freedom, they will know that the American president is on their side. Instead of managing American decline, leaving allies to doubt us and adversaries to test us, we will act in the conviction that the United States is still the greatest force for peace and liberty that this world has ever known. President Obama is the kind of politician who puts promises on the record and then calls that the record. But we are 4 years into this presidency. The issue is not the economy that Barack Obama inherited, not the economy that he envisions, but this economy that we are living. College graduates should not have to live out their 20s in their childhood bedrooms, staring up at fading Obama posters and wondering when they can move out and get going with life. Everyone who feels stuck in the Obama economy is right to focus on the here and now. And I hope you understand this too. If you're feeling left out or passed by, you have not failed. Your leaders have failed you. None of us should have to settle for the best this administration offers. A dull, adventureless journey from one entitlement to the next, a government-planned life, a country where everything is free but us. Listen to the way we're already spoken to. Listen to the way we are spoken to already, as if everyone is stuck in some class or station in life, victims of circumstances beyond our control, with the government there to help us cope with our fate. It's the exact opposite of everything I learned growing up in Wisconsin or at college in Ohio. Now, when I was waiting tables, washing dishes, or mowing lawns for money, I never thought of myself as stuck in some station in life. I was on my own path, my own journey, an American journey, where I could think for myself, decide for myself, define happiness for myself. That's what we do in this country. That's the American dream. That's freedom, and I'll take it any day over the supervision and sanctimony of the central planners. By themselves, the failures of one administration are not a mandate for a new administration. A challenger must stand on his own merits. He must be ready and worthy to serve in the office of president. We're a full generation apart, Governor Romney and I, and in some ways we're different. There are the songs on his iPod, which I've heard on the campaign bus, and I've heard it on many hotel elevators. He actually urged me to play some of these songs at campaign rallies. I said, look, I hope it's not a deal breaker, Mitt, but my playlist, it starts with AC/DC and it ends with Zeppelin. Look, a generation apart, but that doesn't matter. It makes us different, but not in any of the things that matter. Mitt Romney and I both grew up in the heartland, and we know what places like Wisconsin and Michigan look like when times are good. We know what these communities look like when times are good, when people are working, when families are doing more than just getting by. And we know it can be that way again. We've had very different careers, mine mainly in public service, his mostly in the private sector. He helped start businesses and turn around failing ones. And by the way, being successful in business, that's a good thing. Mitt has not only succeeded, but he succeeded where others could not. He turned around the Olympics at a time when a great institution was collapsing under the weight of bad management, overspending, and corruption. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? He was the Republican governor of a state where almost 9 in 10 legislators are Democrats, and yet he balanced the budget without raising taxes. Unemployment went down, household incomes went up, and Massachusetts under Governor Mitt Romney saw its credit rating upgraded. Mitt and I also go to different churches. But in any church, the best kind of preaching is done by example. And I've been watching that example. The man who will accept your nomination tomorrow is prayerful and faithful and honorable. Not only a defender of marriage, he offers an example of marriage at its best. Not only a fine businessman, he's a fine man, worthy of leading this optimistic and good-hearted country. Our faiths come together in the same moral creed. We believe that in every life there is goodness. For every person there is hope. Each one of us was made for a reason, bearing the image and likeness of the Lord of life. We do not each face the world alone. And the greatest of all responsibilities is that of the strong to protect the weak. The truest measure of any society is how it treats those who cannot defend or care for themselves. Each of these moral ideas is essential to democratic government, to the rule of law, to life in a humane and decent society. They are the moral creed of our country, as powerful in our time as on the day of America's founding. They are self-evident and unchanging, and sometimes even presidents need reminding that our rights come from nature and God and not from government. The founding generation secured those rights for us. And in every generation since, the best among us have defended our freedoms. They are protecting us right now. We honor them and all of our veterans, and we thank them. The right that makes all the difference now is the right to choose our own leaders. And you are entitled to the clearest possible choice, because the time for choosing is drawing near. So here is our pledge. We will not duck the tough issues, we will lead. We will not spend the next 4 years blaming others, we will take responsibility. We will not try to replace our founding principles, we will reapply our founding principles. The work ahead will be hard. These times demand the best of all of us. All of us, but we can do this. We can do this. Together, we can do this. We can get this country working again. We can get this economy growing again. We can make the safety net safe again. We can do this. Whatever your political party, let's come together for the sake of our country. Join Mitt Romney and me. Let's give this effort everything we have. Let's see this thing all the way through. Let's get this done. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you.
a fired-up Republican convention, just loving what they heard from vice presidential now nominee Paul Ryan, watching his family come out to greet him, his 3 kids, his wife Jenna, and of course his mom, who he gives one last big hug, using her in this speech, as he has done earlier, as a reminder to many who say that he's going to change Medicare and hurt seniors. He points to his mom, someone on Medicare, and here they go with that traditional walk on the stage. It's always a fun time.
They get their picture, Amy, and they get their moment. Republicans eager to hear from Paul Ryan. Had a speech. This was not the wonk that we're used to hearing Paul Ryan in Washington. This ran the gamut. This was the Paul Ryan story. This was the Paul Ryan indictment, and this is the Paul Ryan endorsement. We heard more about Mitt Romney here tonight than we did from some of the main speakers last night. Not surprising, of course. And we heard Paul Ryan stitching together his story, how it fits together with his fierce advocacy on budget issues, and signaling very strongly that Medicare is an issue that Republicans say they want to engage with the Democrats on.
Yeah, and I think though what we saw, that this was a speech that was very well received here, because there was a lot about this speech that was about against Romney, but I still think against Obama, but there's still, the case needs to be made for Mitt Romney. That's Mitt Romney, what he's going to have to do there. Reince Priebus now coming out and probably gabbling this to a close. I wanted to bring in our Yahoo colleague. Hello, Holly.
Hello.
How are you doing? Holly Bailey,
Good.
who you've been following, of course, this campaign very closely. You've been spending a lot of time on the campaign plane. Tell us a little bit about the Paul Ryan you saw up here compared to the Paul Ryan you've seen in Congress and the Paul Ryan we've seen on the campaign trail.
I thought he was noticeably less fired up. He seemed to be playing it more safe, as Rick said. He was sort of explaining who he is to people that have not been paying attention. And he talked more about Mitt Romney than anybody else that has spoken at this convention so far.
Oh, well, that is the job of the number 2, though, right?
Maybe even including Ann Romney, actually. when you have a full telling of the story, that's an important part of this. I was struck in listening to this speech that Paul Ryan makes this generational play, but it seemed a little forced to me. I'm interested in your take on that, Holly. I mean, you talk about the iPod. I'm not even sure that AC/DC and Zeppelin are cool anymore, are they?
As a man who only listens to music from the 70s,
does that count or not?
No,
it doesn't sound like it does to me.
This guy doesn't have any.
So if you're,
music.
you're going for Gen Xers and younger, does that?
Well, that's he certainly didn't mention Rage Against the Machine and Nirvana,
that's true.
which
Right.
he's talked about on the campaign trail. So this was definitely, I think, like a prime time speech in many ways. You know, you don't want to alienate people in Iowa by telling them that you love Rage Against the Machine. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, at least you could have put Coldplay in there or something from that has been in the 21st century. Something I was struck by, though, is I felt like this was a speech that was designed for this audience, but I don't know that it was something that could transcend to the swing voters saying, tell me why I should vote for Mitt Romney. They know the reasons why they want to vote against Barack Obama. What does Mitt Romney now need to do to make that case?
That is, a really big dilemma for Romney tomorrow. I mean, there are his campaign says again and again, there are so few people that they actually have to target. These swing voters, these people that have not made up their minds. It's such a small number of people. And so it's going to be interesting to see what he does tomorrow night. Then previewing the speech, his campaign strategist had basically sort of suggested he's going to say what he's been saying on the campaign trail for months. But the question is, does he try to humanize himself? Does he, try to, basically make an appeal to these people?
All right, we're going to go down to the floor right now where ABC's Koki Roberts is standing by. And Koki, all right, not just yet. We'll go to Koki in a moment. But until then, we'll stick here with Holly. And Holly, it felt like to me Condoleezza Rice was the star of the night, and I was waiting for her to get knocked off the pedestal by Paul Ryan, and I'm still giving her the championship. Yep. I felt like that was the speech that had the emotional core of this convention.
Yeah, people were completely riveted. The floor was completely quiet in a way that I think it wasn't for Ryan. I mean, people were watching Ryan. I was down there very briefly, but people also were sort of looking at their phones a little bit with Condoleezza Rice. Total focus on her.
All right, I think we have our own David Muir standing by. David, you spent a lot of time on the bus with Mitt Romney and speeches with Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. Your takeaways from Paul Ryan's big debut on the national stage?
this was a gift to the Mitt Romney campaign and to Mitt Romney in particular. As you know, Rick, as soon as he named Paul Ryan to the ticket, they had planned on campaigning sort of separately so they could take on the battleground states. They said 2-on-2 up against the president and the vice president, Joe Biden, of course. But it wasn't long before these two were paired up together, because Mitt Romney feeds off of the energy that you see up on that stage here tonight from Paul Ryan. And one of the things that really struck me, Rick and Amy, was the fact that this is the first vice presidential candidate from the post-baby boom generation, the first generation Xer. He talked about playfully warning Mitt Romney that his playlist starts with AC/DC and ends with Zeppelin. And he talked about those fading Obama posters on the wall. Ann Romney went for women last night. Paul Ryan went for the youth vote tonight, and the next generation facing very tough economic questions on this road ahead.
That's a great point, David. We actually have a clip we wanted to play of Paul Ryan on Medicare. Take a look.
You see, even with all the hidden taxes to pay for the healthcare takeover, even with the new law and new taxes on nearly 1 million small businesses, the planners in Washington still didn't have enough money. They needed more. They needed hundreds of billions more. So they just took it all away from Medicare. $716 billion funneled out of Medicare by President Obama. An obligation we have to our parents and grandparents is being sacrificed, all to pay for a new entitlement we didn't even ask for.
David, you know that Democrats want to make this Medicare pitch something that they use against Paul Ryan. How well do you think he's going to be able to push back on this? Do you think he did that tonight?
I think he started, following him on the campaign trail, we have heard one of those lines before, which is, we welcome this debate on Medicare and we will win it. Thunderous applause here in the convention hall when he said that. He's had some practice saying that on the campaign trail. And I believe that within the Romney campaign, that they believe they can win it, but also that they believe they have no choice now but to take on this fight. In naming Paul Ryan to the ticket, many of the strategists, Republican strategists, Democratic strategists alike, saying it was a very bold choice. They knew that. It was a calculated choice. And in bringing him on, immediately his policies, his proposals in Congress under the microscope, and of course, one of them, his controversial budget plan, which involves changing Medicare as we know it right now to, as he says, as he argues, keep it solvent for future generations. And because that was so much of his political blueprint in Washington, they really have no choice but to fight the fight. But that's not to say that within the campaign, because strategists repeatedly tell me on the trail that they believe the American sentiment toward entitlements has changed, and they're going to fight this case in these next 70 days or so, straight through November.
All right, ABC's David Muir on the convention floor. People are still fired up down there, wrapping up a little bit. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Appreciate it.
We have to ask David what's on his iPod and whether he thinks AC/DC is indeed something that the young kids of America are listening to right now. But what do I know?
I do think I think that between that and the image of the poster, I think David's onto something really interesting there. That there's something there. This idea of college kids coming home after college, not finding a job, and looking at that faded poster and saying, when am I going to get to move out in this Obama economy? If those voters are disaffected, you don't see the Obama surge, you maybe see them vote on the other side. That was the message tonight. And I think, again, Paul Ryan hitting this, the same thing we've heard from Romney for a long time. You don't have to dislike Barack Obama, but it's enough to say you're giving up on his economic policies. If the last 4 years haven't made things better, why would the next 4 years get there?
That's right. In fact, he made that exact case. He made that exact case. And I want to go down and talk to Cokie Roberts about this from the floor. She got a great perspective of this. Cokie, give me your sense about that Paul Ryan speech. Is this the kind of thing that you think those swing voters in America are looking at right now and saying, you know what, maybe I should give that Romney-Ryan ticket a second look?
I really do think that. I think it was a terrific speech, and he didn't shy away from the issues that the Democrats have been using against him. So he talked about, as you've said, Medicare, but he talked about that this is a debate we can win. He talked about the Lord of Life, so that he touched therefore on the issue of abortion. I think that he drew word pictures in a way that people could really relate to it. You've already referenced the poster, the fading Obama poster on the ceiling, which was a very funny line, and the iPod songs that would also play in hotel elevators. But I think that his word pictures about his mother were very moving. His word pictures about people getting up in the morning and going to open the store and to worry about the business and all of that. I think that those were all things that you would listen to and nod throughout, recognizing what he was saying. And the fact that he did it with humor and with optimism, this whole notion of we can do better, we can fix it. It's America, don't sink into the doldrums of despair. We can fix it optimistically. That is something I think people are very eager to hear. So to the degree that any people were able to hear that, I think that it could have an impact.
All right, Koki, thank you for the check-in for the floor, and thank you for being with us tonight. We'll now bring in Nightline anchor Terry Moran, who's fired up and ready to go for his program in a few minutes, but he joins us first. And Terry, what did you think about Paul Ryan, his big debut on the stage? We've talked about AC/DC songs. We've talked about Obama posters. Did he connect? Did he tell people, look, this is a guy who's here to stay, and this is a guy who can be an effective advocate for Mitt Romney?
I think there's no question of that, Rick. The crowd certainly thought so. You could feel that he had the Republican Party tonight in the palm of his hand, and that was one of his tasks. He was picked to bring them together to go forward, and he certainly did that. And I think what Koki was just saying is absolutely spot on. There was something youthful. There was something can-do about Paul Ryan. Americans love that, and frankly, a very well-written speech. The whole young people staring at the fading Obama poster on the wall, they crafted this very well for him, and he hit all the bases.
Okay, but compare his speech to the woman who came before him, Condoleezza Rice, who really gave a speech that folks in this hall were just absolutely riveted by. To give us a sense in your mind about whether that actually maybe even overshadowed what the Paul Ryan did tonight.
You know, I covered Condi for years. I covered that White House for the first 5 years, and I must say I was amazed. Not because I don't know that she's a very smart, very capable woman, but because I thought she carried so much baggage up to that stage. Now, she never said the word Iraq, okay, but she cast her vision of America in such a way that was absolutely core Republican, right in their wheelhouse, and touched their hearts with that beautiful story of her version, as a black girl from Birmingham, her version of American exceptionalism. I was amazed.
We've got that clip. Let's take a look and get Terry's quick take on the other side.
And on a personal note, a little girl grows up in Jim Crow, Birmingham, the segregated city of the South, where her parents can't take her to a movie theater or to a restaurant. But they have her absolutely convinced that even if she can't have a hamburger at the Woolworth's lunch counter, she could be President of the United States if she wanted to be, and she becomes the Secretary of State.
And Terry, as you see, of course, that brought the crowd to their feet. The thing that amazed me was the fact that she had such a broad message. This wasn't that much about foreign policy, even. Forget Iraq. She talked about education. She talked here about opportunity. All of those things you said in the wheelhouse of the Republicans.
And I've talked to her about education. She's a huge advocate for that. So maybe she's going to run for something. But I want to say that moment and their reaction was good for America. Because it's not good that all people of one color vote for one party and that the other party is predominantly of one color. That's not healthy for the country. And the fact that she can stand up there naturally as a conservative Republican and speak to the heart of this party on many issues, as you point out, that's just a happy moment for America in an unhappy time.
I'm sorry that we have to let you go.
When our program,
you gotta go do this Nightline thing.
When our program
You have a
ends
day
here
job.
online, you can go to the television if you've got one. We hope you do, because that's still
watch Nightline.
That's right, Nightline, 11:35 tonight, and Terry will be with it all night. Thank you so much, Terry.
Thanks,
Thanks for joining us. I do think, Amy, to your point, Condi Rice so much the star. Look, it is Paul Ryan, Mitt Romney. That's the story, but you need these surrogates, these advocates out there to make the case for you, and they can do it in a different way. The people on that stage, though, that is not the predominant face of the Republican Party.
But could you imagine if you put Condoleezza Rice in an ad talking about education? Put that in for swing women voters. I think that would be as powerful, or if not more, than having Mrs. Romney get in and do that for them. And before we go, I wanted to make sure that we did one more check-in with our friend Phoebe Connolly from Yahoo to get a social media sense for how this night played out. So what can you tell us?
Well, the big record of the evening was broke by Paul Ryan. Official Twitter, the company, sent out a blast actually right as his speech was closing up, saying that he broke the record that Ann Romney sent last night with highest number of tweets being sent per minute. Paul Ryan broke that with 6,500 tweets. Actually, the graphic that you guys are seeing, this is the volume. The graphic you're seeing is the volume of tweets per night. And tonight actually surpassed what we saw last night.
Do we know exactly what it was that people were tweeting about? Was it something specific, or it just was that it was Paul Ryan?
So far, I think we just know that it was Paul Ryan. To give you a little bit of perspective, right, because tweets per minute feels a little abstract. When Mitt Romney was introducing him in Norfolk, so sort of the moment he stepped onto the national stage, the peak at that point was around 3,700 tweets per minute. Tonight, his peak was 6,000.
Well, I got to say, though, I would think the number would be larger. And let me play devil's advocate.
Yeah,
that was a Saturday morning. Okay, that was a Saturday morning. People are doing their errands, going to soccer games and everything else. This is prime time covered everywhere on a Wednesday night. That number being only twice, I would have thought it would have been well into the stratosphere. Now, it was newsier then, obviously, but
it was newsy, but I mean, also this is a political conversation. I mean, I think, if you're going to be a junkie watching Paul Ryan at this point, you were probably going to tune in and hear Mitt introduce him that first time around.
And any hashtags that we see jumping off the charts?
Don't have any hashtags to talk about. I do. Our sentiment was actually a very mixed picture. We saw greater negatives during some of the big speeches, but nothing really conflicting. Still, last night the story was more positive, I think. Overall, this evening it was just much more of a mixed picture.
Well, I'm going to be fascinated to compare these to what happens at the Democratic convention. Again, this is the first time we're going to see back-to-back conventions covered by social media in this way, and now we're going to have a real live opportunity to measure those. Phoebe, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So we're going to wrap up tonight with some of the highlights from what we saw right behind us on that podium.
When the Supreme Court upheld Obamacare, the first words out of my mouth were, I still think it's unconstitutional. To thrive, we must believe in ourselves again, and we must never, never trade our liberty for any fleeting promise of security.
What Mitt Romney knows, and what we know, is that the success at home also depends on our leadership in the world, especially in Israel, a nation under existential threat, to doubt America's leadership.
Do you remember when Barack Obama said that if he couldn't turn things around in 3 years, it'd be a one-term proposition? Well, it's been almost 4 years. I say let's make him a proposition he can't refuse. Let's vote him out.
My fellow Americans, we do not have a choice. We cannot be reluctant to lead, and you cannot lead from behind. You can come from humble circumstances and you can do great things. That it does not matter where you came from, it matters where you are going. And on a personal note, a little girl grows up in Jim Crow, Birmingham. the segregated city of the South where her parents can't take her to a movie theater or to a restaurant. But they have her absolutely convinced that even if she can't have a hamburger at the Woolworth's lunch counter, she could be President of the United States if she wanted to be, and she becomes the Secretary of State.
Ryan administration will protect and strengthen Medicare for my mom's generation, for my generation, and for my kids and yours. Ladies and gentlemen, our nation needs this debate. We want this debate. We will win this debate. These past 4 years, we have suffered no shortage of words in the White House. What is missing is leadership in the White House. Let's come together for the sake of our country. Join Mitt Romney and me. Let's give this effort everything we have. Let's see this thing all the way through. Let's get this done. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Those are the sights and sounds of the third day, second night of the Republican National Convention here in Tampa. And Amy, of course, Paul Ryan's night, Condoleezza Rice's night, all leading up to the big night. And that's tomorrow, Mitt Romney's big primetime address.
That's right. And you can, of course, tune in here, 7 o'clock. We're going to bring it all to you all night. We can run through all the speakers that are going to be there. We're going to have great guests once again. You can, of course, please continue to hashtag 2012 GOP. Follow us on Twitter at Amy E. Walter, at Rick Klein. Send us your questions. We'd love to be able to weigh in on all those things.
Keep the conversation going at abcnews.com, at Yahoo News as well, of course, on Twitter. We'll see you again tomorrow night, 7 o'clock.
Right here.
Mitt Romney's big night. Thanks for being here.